Hi everyone, it's 8:45 and I've got the pleasure of handing over to Neil Richards. Neil, I've been honoured enough to know for a number of years now, and I'm constantly amazed by what he does on Tableau Public and on the community. So it's with great pleasure that I am able to say, Neil, over to you, and you can take control and wow us all for 45 minutes.
Thank you, Simon. I will just share my screen and hopefully we will be able to go. Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you can all see the screen, and I hope that everything's ready to go. Thank you for that great introduction, Simon, and thank you, Eleanor, for the great introduction to the conference. I need to watch it again because there was some great tips and they went by really quickly, so I'm going to be tuning in afterwards for that. But today I'm going to speak to you about design-driven data. You can see my details there. My name is Neil Richards. As Simon mentioned, I've been using Tableau for 2 or 3 years. And a lot of what I do, you can see either on my website there or on Twitter at the Neil Richards. Now, as you've heard mentioned today, if you've got any questions, there is a chat window, but if you can try and use the Q&A. I've got a bit of a confession to make. I've timed this talk a couple of times and I love this talk. I've got lots to say and it will probably take the full 45 minutes and maybe squeak over a minute or two. So if I don't have a chance to answer questions, then I apologize. But this hashtag design-driven data, if you have a chance to put it there, or if I have a chance to answer later, I'll reply on Twitter and I'll use that hashtag for my answer. So hopefully we can get some conversation going on that during the day as well. Okay, well, this is a Tableau conference, so I thought I would start by looking at the word Tableau and what Tableau means and why it sort of it gives the impression to me that it's all about art and design. Now, the word Tableau, this is the definition that if you can find if you Google it. Essentially, you can see a tableau is a picture, but it's also a group of objects, a striking scene. So the word tableau was chosen for if you really want to make a striking scene to demonstrate what it is you want to show. Now, unfortunately, you'll see statuesque representation there. There's nothing there that says anything is moving, and I guess that kind of explains Tableau's lack of animation. But if you want to do something static, that explains why Tableau is named as it is. But essentially, I mean, Tableau is an English word, but Tableau is a French word, really. And if you consider it in French, it has a lot more meanings and sub-meanings. The highlight there is not by me, and that's the highlighted definition is the main definition. And you see, Tableau is a board, so it's not just a picture. Essentially, it's a blank canvas. It is literally a blank canvas. So I tend to like to think of both definitions when I'm considering what Tableau is, what Tableau does, and what it can do. So it's a way of creating striking images. It's a way of getting noticeable, impactful visualization. But you start from a blank canvas, and if there's something that you want to do, Tableau means. So I'm going to start with a blog post, and this blog post is by a gentleman called Neil Richards, and that's me. My blog post, I call it Questions in Data Viz, and 90% of the time, probably more, I pose a question and I usually don't bother answering it because the answer is usually, it depends. If you've ever heard Andy Cotgreve or Cole Affleck recently, you'll hear that it depends is a very good answer to so many data visualization related questions. So more often than not, I use my blog to pose a question, and maybe that question will lead on to other questions, or it'll mention pros and cons and that kind of thing. Usually, though, in my early days here, I answered this question straight away. I answered it with obviously, and I said, obviously, the answer to this is yes. Should the data drive the visualization? And why is it yes? I said, well, it can't be the other way around. Okay. Well, that's kind of awkward. I suppose the next blog post I ought to put is it okay to break the rules? Is it okay to change your mind? And I put an obviously yes to that one as well. So the best practice is, of course, you start with your data. If you have a job at work, or if you're working for a client, you don't decide what you want to do first. You have the data, you explore it, and there's nothing better for that than Tableau. You decide what best fits your data. And then you go ahead and you do your visualization. So why then am I talking about design-driven data? Well, here is a slide from a talk about data humanism, which was given by Giorgia Lupi. And this was shown in one of her recent TED Talks as well. And I can't recommend it highly enough. Now, Giorgia, when she talks about data humanism, she's really talking about swapping around the way we think about many of the data visualization principles, and in particular, to stop thinking about big data and start thinking about small data. All of your data, chances are your data represents human beings. So it's not infallible, it's imperfect, it's not impartial, it's subjective. So there's so many different ways that you can start to think about the individuality of what's going on in your data. And then the example she gives, it's to do with drawing your data, not processing it. And towards the bottom there, we see the key point of my talk. Data-driven design, well, that might be your mantra, that might be your best principles. But what about if you were to switch it around? Design-driven data. Now, when I saw this slide, or when I was watching the TED Talk that Giorgia gave, that really was a sort of light bulb moment for me. And I thought, hang on, that's actually what I do, or that's what I like to do. You know, not when I'm given data at work on a professional capacity and need to give a bar chart to give the most quick, actionable, and easy to be seen insight. But when I want to create, when I want to make impact, when I have an idea of something I want to explore and improve, yeah, design-driven data, that can be the way to go. So Giorgia Lupi, along with her friend and colleague Stephanie Possebeck, they ran a project in 2016, I believe, called Dear Data. And what Dear Data was over 52 weeks. Each of them, one from New York and one from London, would send a postcard to each other describing something different, a different topic from that particular week. Now, all of the time, these data visualizations were hand-drawn. The visualization would be drawn on one side of the postcard, and the legend or the explanation along with the address would be on the other side of the postcard. And these were always about human things. These were always about small data. It was about feelings. It was about emotions. It was about events that had happened that particular week. It might have been, what they ate, what they drank, what they felt, what swear words they used, a number of great things. And as an aside, I love this particular illustration as well, because what better example of a small multiple would you see? Perfect 25 square battleship grey US mailboxes on one side, and 25 square bright red UK post boxes with mouldy green moss on the top. I think it's a fantastic representation. But I digress, and that's what Giorgia Lupi and Stephanie Possebeck were all about in their design-driven data exercise. And I would really encourage you to check that out, the book, as well as the website. And after Dear Data came Dear Data 2, not much longer after. This was a project run by Andy Kriebel and Jeff Schaefer, two Tableau Zen masters, and they wanted to recreate the same exercise that Giorgia and Stephanie were doing, and they wanted to take it one step further and recreate their visualizations in Tableau. So as well as doing the hand-drawn postcard, they would then go, as you can see on the bottom right there, and recreate the visualization in Tableau. Now, here's an example. I think this was one by Andy Kriebel. Apologies if this was by Jeffrey. And you can see he's decided to visualize in a hand-drawn way his emotions and actions and all the different occurrences around privacy for that particular week. And once he's done that, he's then figured out, how can I do that, and how can I use that design and drop it into Tableau? And there we see how he's managed to do that. And it was another sort of light bulb moment for me was, again in 2016, Andy Kriebel was one of the UK-based Zens on tour. And as part of that, Andy gave a talk demonstrating Dia Data 2. And what he said was essentially what I said before, was that if you can draw it, so if you can design it, Tableau can create it for you. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily Tableau has it there on Show Me. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it straight out of the box. And we all know what great things Tableau can do straight out of the box. But if you push it, or if there are things that you really want to do, the chances are Tableau can recreate that for you. Think of Tableau as your blank canvas. And my next slide refers to the fabulous Ben Jones. Now, Ben Jones is the head of Tableau Public. He's based in Seattle, and you can get hold of him at Data Remix there. He gave a recent webinar and a blog post behind it, all about how important liberal arts are in BI, in business intelligence, so in data visualization. So what he really wanted to emphasize is that having these artistic skills, touchy-feely skills, if you like, are so important to bring these in when you're producing visualization, business intelligence outputs like that. And so what he said is, think like a journalist, express like an artist, and relate like a novelist. Now, there's echoes in all three of these of the storytelling debate that you might have heard. Alberto Cairo loves to talk about storytelling in data. He gets exercised about it too, as to whether you really should tell a story, or should you not? Should you just be reporting? And if you were to look, in fact, I'm going to talk about this myself. If you were to look, you'll find so many different opinions, definitions, thoughts about storytelling in data, how important it is, but just what does it mean? Cole Knaflick has obviously written a whole book, and her brand is based around that. But if you were to ask Chad Skelton, for example, he mentions that finding a story is like being a journalist. So you talk about this in the angle, and you would actually, you might ask, what's the story? What are you trying to tell? So sort of rather than get too hung up about what a story is when you're telling a story, these are sort of three more things that really encapsulate it for me. And particularly if you express like an artist, if you use just the English expression, you know, if you're painting the picture of what's going on, that's another way of telling a story. And I suppose if you're painting a picture, you might think that you're telling the story and you're doing it in a more expressive way, or a more unique way to that particular individual. So I think those sort of three bullet points, if you like, of the different thought processes of creating a visualization really sort of sum it up nicely for me. Now I've entitled this next one Impressionism. I know nothing about Impressionism. I'm not an artist, and that's why I love the direction that Tableau lets me take to make me be creative. But this particular well-known painting is by Monet, and even I understand that what he's done is he's stripped it bare. I don't know what he could see in this particular scene when he was on the Seine. And he looks, but you can see he's taken out all the definition of the docks, the buildings, the sky, the water, and he's just he's expressed exactly what he wanted to express. He's taken the parts of the image that would tell his story, in a most intriguing way, in the most artistic way, and in the way to create impact and to tell the story that he wanted to tell. And I mean, I'm going to go on and we're going to show a few sort of visualizations eventually, but really you're doing that whenever you create a data visualization. And I don't necessarily mean a piece of data art. You are always narrowing down the data to tell the story that you want to tell. How many visualizations have we seen even today, and we're likely to see today, and we're seeing all sorts of demonstrations on best practices and how to do things. We look at the Superstore data set, but we never visualize the whole thing. You're never going to visualize each individual order or transaction or anything like that. Just like in Monet's painting, we can't see every little thing that's going on. You're deciding, or let's say you're looking at the recent Winter Olympics data, you're deciding to aggregate it. You might be deciding, okay, I'm going to show medals, I might show countries, and I might show it in this particular way. But you're not showing each individual piece of data. You're not showing each result, each time, each particular piece of data. In any visualization you do, it's important that you decide how you are going to frame it. You pick the data that you are going to show, and then you use your design in order to create the visualization that you want. And I think, to me, Impressionism, a simple particular example like that, explains it really well to me. Okay, and now this particular photo was taken last year at the London conference, and it sort of encapsulates a lot of reasons why I wanted to talk today, to give this talk and to talk about design-driven data. So it's not the guy on the right. The guy on the right is Charlie H. Tableau, and if he was to do a talk on anything, I would listen intently for an hour, because he's got some great skills. He's a great advocate in the community. He and I almost sort of chalk and cheese. He will show some great business practices. But this talk's not about him. It's partly to do with the guy on his right in the identical T-shirt, Andy Cotgreave. Andy is the evangelist with Tableau who said we should talk more about art and what it's possible to do in Tableau. I think that would be a really good opportunity, and I was quite excited about that. You can tell I like to think of myself as being a data artist. And so that got me thinking, and I wanted to do something about art in Tableau, but I didn't really want to be, it wanted to be about producing works of art or producing things that look pretty. I wanted it to be about having designs in Tableau, but that were true data visualizations that have data behind them. But I wanted to thank Andy for encouraging me and giving me the idea. But he's not the most important guy in that photo either, and he's not the inspiration for me. For me, the inspiration is the guy bent over in a dirty brown jacket behind him, looking into the corner there, and talking to his friend in something brightly coloured that you could just see in between. He is looking at two data visualizations there, but he's looking at them in the context of what looks like an art gallery. Now he's looking at them, and he's showing interest in them, and he's talking to his friend. He's going, well, what do you think about that? He might be saying, that's a load of rubbish, I could do that. He might be saying, what's this spirally one? That looks quite interesting. I don't know, but something has drawn him to look in there and to find out more, to possibly appreciate it as art, and to talk about it to his friend. Now, obviously, I'm a little bit biased there, because those two pieces of art, or data visualizations, or what you want to call them, are by me. And they were featured at the London Tableau conference last year in the Viz gallery, and that was such a highlight for me to make me realise of what, I like to do things which capture people's attention, but you really can sort of take it one level further. And that was, you can see that made my day. I pretended I was taking a photo of Andy and Charlie, but really I was just quite chuffed to see that for the first and possibly last time in my life, people were looking at stuff that I did with an artistic bent. So moving on, so this is almost as an aside, really. If you're interested in just different ways you can create art in Tableau alone, I picked links that you can look at there, and it's no coincidence that 2 are by the fantastic Ken Flurledge, who, if there's anything that could be done in Tableau, he will do it. But this is not quite so much what I wanted to talk about. The one above is me having a go at one of Ken's techniques to replicate a picture using circles, because there isn't data behind this. This is just a way of sort of plotting 5,000 circles to make it look good. So I don't particularly want to focus on that, but I can't let a talk sort of focus a little bit around art go without sort of demonstrating some of the great stuff that Ken has done. And also the third one there, the Information Lab blog post, that's by Laura Peterson, who, when only sort of relatively new to Tableau, found a great way of producing Andy Warhol style pop art quadrant pictures, which is another fantastic thing to have a look at. So if you look at this talk and think, oh, I wanted to do more art, I'm not bothered about the data stuff, we'll come back and look at it again and try those links there. Okay, so now we move on. This is the first of my visualizations that I want to show you. Now, this wasn't particularly my idea. Last year there was a thing which gained a lot of momentum called a joy plot. Now, a joy plot was a type of visualization, as you can see, and I've tried to replicate one on the right, and they're based around an album cover by Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures. Now you can see this particular album cover. Essentially, it looks like a whole load of line charts, but they overlap. So it's intriguing. We can't actually see what it represents, or we don't know what each line or the amplitude of each wave means. But we can at least see. We might be interested to know what that data is, and it started a sort of trend of new plot types. Now I saw that design, and I thought, I want to have a go at that. How am I going to do that? I need some data to fit that design. So I had to think of it in Tableau terms. I had to think of it in terms of contacts and what I knew. And I thought, well, I can do a whole load of line charts. That's okay. And then I will try and use Tableau to break it around and move these and see what we can do. So I decided to look at something I knew about. I decided to look at some tennis data. So each line on the right for me is a player. The amplitude of the lines is the number of games he's won in that particular year. And from left to right, we have a timeline since the open era of Wimbledon, so from 1968 to 2016, or whenever it was I did that chart. And you can look at that and you can say, well, I don't like that. I don't know what it means. And that's fine. You can move past it, but you might be intrigued by it. You might think, well, I like a joy plot. That's interesting. I know it overlaps. There's things I can't see. So you have to then interact with it. You can come in. You can see, if you were to hover over or to use a highlight, you would start to see the tooltip give you information. You might think, oh, right, okay, that big peak there is Roger Federer. He's hiding behind Bjorn Borg, etc., etc. You can see highlights. So it's a true data visualization using the design idea of the joy plot on the left. My next quote here, intrigue leads to insight, and that's what I was trying to sort of explain there. The insight from some of these design-driven data examples that I want to show you, it comes from being intrigued. It comes from being the guy in the gallery and going up and thinking, oh, what's this this visualization that looks like a coloured load of toothpaste or a big spiral? Or it's coming to the joy plot and exploring with tooltips and just wondering what it is because you're intrigued by the design. Now, it was Simon who introduced me just now, Simon Beaumont, who mentioned intrigue leads to insight. I thought, a great quote. I'm going to use that. And when I Googled it to find out, I thought, well, it's obviously not Simon. Who really came up with that quote? I genuinely don't know. So I'm going to steal it and attribute it half to Simon and half to me, and that's going to sort of really try to be a mantra for some of the work that I do. If you Google that exact phrase, all you find is 2 blog posts by me. So let's sort of try and get that started, or start that as a way of thinking these particular types of Tableau visualization. if you think intrigue leads to insight, that's how you can overcome the fact that, well, actually, my joy plot lines are overlapping. It doesn't conform to best practice, that kind of thing. So I want to show you a few more examples. The idea of recreating an album cover for the joy plot that I just showed you made me think, well, I quite like copying that. What if I come up with some of my own ideas? Now, the album cover on the left was by a group called James in the 1990s, and I saw it again actually in a blog post by Mike Cisneros. Mike will be talking later, and if you only listen to one talk today, listen to Mike. So I don't know what he's going to talk about, but he's an absolute genius, and I would really recommend you listen to that talk. But for now, anyway, what I wanted to do when I saw this was think, well, that screams to me small multiples. I wonder if I could do a visualization that looks like that. And I didn't do anything straight away until I came across a data set which I thought would work for me. I looked at the data and think, well, I want something that I can split into 15 categories, whether 15 dates, 15 regions, I don't know yet. And I probably want something that when I do it small multiple, I've got a headline figure in the middle, and then we've just got 7 circles around it. So if I can come up with 7 sub figures or sub measures, which makes sense in the context of the center of the flower, and something I can repeat 15 or 16 times, then I think we can do something here. And eventually, as you'll see, we did come across a Make Over Monday supplied data set, which just worked really nicely. And I could use, I don't exactly recreate the album because I want it to have a proper data visualization feel about it. So instead of the arty look of the album cover on the left, I want the size of my circles to mean something. Now, all right, size of circles isn't the greatest way of showing analytics in a data visualization, but it does work, and it does allow you to make comparisons, and it does allow you, if you're intrigued, to go in and to get that further insight. So on the right, you can see what I did. I looked at world life expectancy figures across 7 different continents, or not strictly speaking continents, but 7 different geographical areas, and was able to recreate the James visualization quite nicely. When I found I had 15 different ways to split the data rather than 16, well, I was able to then just use the last little square there for my annotation. My next one, I can see Colin there. I can see the cat, and I can see Baby Watch. Hello. You must listen to Colin later. He's going to be one of the highlights of the talk. And when they put this up on the YouTube later, I'll get them to edit that bit out. But hi, Colin. Right. The next talk is about the Pet Shop Boys, which was another video that another album cover that I saw. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, well, this has to be recreated. This is actually sort of easy design driven data to try and recreate because it's a heat map. It has very strong, obvious, discrete colors. I can do something with this. Now, I didn't want to recreate it exactly because I didn't have the exact number of squares. And that's not 100, that's not 10 by 10. That's actually something sort of relatively difficult to recreate. But that didn't matter. I could recreate it using the style of that. But in order to use the to use that design and then to sort of find the data set, it made more sense with I think I had 100 squares to align it like that. Now these were actually geographically arranged as well, so it's a very sort of loose, abstract tile map, if you like. So you can actually sort of get a little bit of insight from it. You can see Europe and Northern Europe in the middle, where sustainable transport figures are higher, and perhaps some not so great results over in South America and in the Americas, and the Africas further away. So there's enough there to draw you in. Whether it's the intrigue of thinking, hang on, doesn't that look like my favourite Pet Shop Boys album, or whether it's the intrigue of thinking, hang on, I like the way that looks. What do I find if I come further in? And you can see I'm on a theme here. And I've tried to start the idea of album covers as data visualization, because although we're going about design-driven data, the designs are not necessarily my own. The designs are inspiration that you can take from everywhere. Now, album covers was a great theme for me, and each time I did one of these, I felt I became more creative. I learned something new. I had to sort of bend Tableau a little bit in order to recreate some of these. So each time I did one of these using whether it's album covers as an inspiration or whether it's something else, I would just really recommend that you do that. So here's another one that will be waking you up if you haven't had your first cup of coffee yet. Screamadelica was an album cover from the 1990s. And I had that one in my locker, if you like, for a while. I really wanted to recreate that, and it took me a while to think, well, this is the design I want. What data can I do? And then it sort of hit me that it's essentially a circle. You could do something radial with this, and it has 12 spikes coming out of it, but one of them is not very well defined. And I thought, well, what if we've got 11? 11 as an Englishman, it starts to make you think of football or cricket, a number of people in a team, and then that's where the idea was driven for that. And the more you look at your design, the more you think, right, well, what can I use so that could be defined by a parameter in my data, and what can I, what would not, but what are the different elements here that can be designed by my data? So we've got 11 spokes. Well, that could represent 11 players. Each of them have got a length and a width. Well, a length, and if I'm thinking cricket, that could be a number of runs. A width can be the rate at which they've been scored. We've got two circular blobs in the middle. What do we want to do with that? Well, we've got two bowlers. Let's do something to do with that. Let's make the thickness and thinness of the white the number of wickets they took. Let's make the size of the whole sun the number of runs a whole team scored. And suddenly, maybe contrived, but if you look at all the different elements that you can control from within a design, you can actually get some real quite in-depth data visualization. And it's very different. You're not going to look at this instantly and think, yeah, yes, I recognize what that is. But if you're drawn in by the original cover, if you're drawn in by how it might have been done, or if you're drawn in by just the general intrigue of wondering what the different length and width of each ray of sunshine might be, then that's where we've got a good data visualization for you. I'm going to move on a little bit more quickly because I've still got a few more to go through. This is my most recent album covers as data visualization. And again, I won't talk too much about this. This was, I wanted to do something to do with the Oscars, so this one's very recent, and I only just discovered the cover on the left. But as soon as I realized that each of them essentially, never mind how psychedelic it looks, to think, well, they either face to the left or to the right. I thought, well, that could be male and female. And most of them have a large circle and a small circle. I thought, if I want to do something with the Oscars, we could have nominations there for Best Actor, Actress versus Supporting Actor, Actress. And then my idea was born. I couldn't do much with the positioning of it. That was all just a bit too random. So from a Tableau point of view, I recreated the thing on the right, and I think it was actually about 64 parameters in there, which I slid around just to make sure I could get all of my circles fitting and not overlapping. But everything there means something. And I want to show you this next slide, because particularly with 10.5, we have a real new advantage in our toolkit, which is Viz in Tooltips. Now, if you want to produce something where your design is a bit weird and wonderful, such as that particular album cover, that you want to draw people in, Tooltips will then allow you to do something a lot more prosaic, if you like. So whereas nobody might know instantly what all the different circles and what the different the lines and colors mean, using Viz in Tooltip means that if you've drawn someone in, if your design has caused people to come in and think, right, well, what does this mean? If they were to then hover over, they'll think, okay, right, I get it. So the different colors mean the different decades. Each one of these is an actor. I understand it here. Here's Denzel Washington, and here are the facts behind it: the nominations, the years, and the age, etc., etc. So, really looking, I'm quite excited now at what Vision Tooltips will bring. I want to go back to my my bizarre cricket visualization and be able to put in a lot more facts and figures behind that. And I think the combination of the two really sort of help, going to help these more abstract visualizations. And just going to embarrass Steve Fenn here, because when he gave me some feedback on this most recent one a few days ago, it made me realize that, yes, that's actually what I've been trying to do. So Steve said, I've had a think about doing some of these, and although I haven't done them myself, it's just made me be a bit more creative. And it's made me be more creative by coming up with ideas, initial ideas that have come from elsewhere, but the design has been able to inspire me. I've been able to learn how to do things and how to be more creative, and to start thinking more creatively when I've got an idea of what I want to do. Now, a lot of design-driven data, it doesn't have to be an album cover or a book cover or anything like that. You can take inspiration from someone else's visualization, and I do like to do that, particularly if these visualizations have been done outside of Tableau. This particular one on the left was done by Gregor Aish, who now is part of Data Wrapper, but I believe he was in the New York Times when he produced this. And this shows the longevity of leaders in the US, not in the US, sorry, in the EU. And I thought, well, I'd really like to recreate that. Wouldn't it be fun if I took some more data that I had or could obtain or could switch? So I recreated it with Premier League managers, because let's face it, I knew it would tell a story. I knew you'd be able to see Ferguson and Wenger stick out from the others, and you would be able to see the short longevity of some of the other English Premier League managers. So it wasn't just a matter of taking that design and thinking, what data do I want to put in it, but then thinking, when I did have the data, yes, I think that is going to be a good data set because I happen to know that's going to tell a really good story. So I was really pleased with the way that came out. I think it's called a Lexis chart. Another recent one here, again, I would just thoroughly recommend you, if you have inspirations, and these inspirations are most likely to be from outside the world of Tableau. There's a designer called Nicola Rougeau who has done some, he's never done a visualization I don't like, and one of his most recent ones here was about discovering the elements. And me being me, I thought I'd like to recreate that. I'd like to recreate the curves and circles. I'd like to do it around something I know. And I started to think, well, from top to bottom there, he's got the list of elements. So he's actually swirling up and down there. And I thought, well, if I could recreate this, I could try it with timeline data. I could try it with who's won the football title from 18, whatever it is, to the present day. Because only if I did that, if I had the time from start to bottom, we'd see some long loops from people who haven't won for years and years. And then we'd see, towards the end, we'd see lots of short waves, like we do at the bottom of Nicola's elements thing there. And again, with his, you can't really see what's going on. To start with, you think, oh, I love the way that looks, but I can't really see what's going on. But if you read the annotation behind it, if you read the different almost hidden element information there, you start to see it. So I wasn't put off by that at all. I was intrigued, and it led me to understand more about what was going on. And so anyway, I've gone to recreate this using football data, and it showed exactly what I wanted it to show. That some of the longer loops of teams who had to wait a long time in between their wins. So you can see a big Aston Villa and Chelsea there. But I would also say with anything that you create that's a little bit weird and wonderful, if you can make it scalable, if you can make it recreatable, then you can show it with a different data set, and that allows you to give context. So in this particular example, I've done the same thing for England and Spain, and you can see the differences. You can see that Spain doesn't have the large loops. It's got less of a history of the competition, but it has more teams that win, so it has fewer colours, and it has less of a billowing loop in between. So that's what I really quite liked about this one, that the intrigue comes from the context of having two different data sets behind it. And all I wanted to say, I don't want to go into this in great detail, but what I want to say in terms of design-driven data, do as much work as you can outside of Tableau if you want. So all of my the design there was driven by the fact that it all depended on the number of seasons in between wins. Is it their last win? How many have they had? That kind of thing. Rather than do calculations in Tableau for that, I did them outside in Excel. If there's something I needed, I was able to calculate it, bring it in, and do it that way. And the file on the right is something that I do whenever I need curves. I can't quite get data densification to work in Tableau a lot of the time. It's actually quite tricky. But what is very easy is to bring in just a 200 rows, or however many rows you want, of ID and angle. And these angles are just sort of calculated increments in radians from pi to minus pi, which is equivalent of 180 to minus 180. And it just makes it much easier to pull this in, to join, and then you've got 200 data points to each individual data point that you've got in your data. And not only can you do that, but you can do it again and again. I'll gloss over this. This was just another way of showing how I created that particular set of angles, and I'm happy to explain that in further detail. So it meant when I came to another idea, so the design that inspired this particular visualization was the design of a curling rink. Are they called rinks? Is it a rink or a house? No, the house is the target bit, so a curling rink. So this was a design that was almost sort of made for me, and I thought, well, okay, I can do left and right. I can have how far something up is, and I can show amount of curve. And if I can find data which allows me to use each of those measures, then that gives me a really good idea. And for the curves, I used exactly the same sheet that I'd used in the football visualization earlier, and the rest sort of came from deciding that if I want this to be my design, I know exactly the kind of things that I want to try and get from the Olympics website, and I was able to do that for preference of clockwise and anti-clockwise throws, for success rates, and that was all the information I needed. And this one got me a visit of the day, and I was really pleased with this because it seemed simple. It is quite a simple look, and it's fairly obvious what's going on, but it uses the design of a game of curling in order to take that further. Okay, so those are most of the ones I wanted to show you. I want to show you a little bit of Tableau in here as well, rather than just talk about it. So this was another joy plot that I did recently, and I particularly wanted this to be a joy plot because when I looked at it in area charts in Tableau, I could see that because of the history of countries, we've got a lot of countries who came away and went away suddenly. So we've got a lot of big peaks, we've got a lot of things that look like icebergs, and we've got a lot of traditional countries like Norway who have been sort of successful all the time. So just, I haven't got long, but just in order to just give a quick 2-minute explanation of how you might want to create a joy plot, I've got a couple of screenshots for you here. So this was the initial idea in Tableau. So have a look. You can do an area chart, and you can do an area chart by dimension. So in this particular case, my dimension was the country. And that almost gives you a joy plot straight away, but obviously it's not going to overlap. Tableau will always allow, it will space to give the maximum number. So I think in this case, United States, you can see it allows for all the countries to not overlap. So my way around it was, once I decided on this design, was to then change the data. So if you do view data, right click, here's your summary data, you can just see it shown at the top. Norway, just simply the year and number of records. All I did, if you want to look at the chart on the left there, was I pasted that into Excel. I pasted that into Excel, and if you look at Norway, there's just 2 extra rows, one for 1924 because it was the first year, and one for 2014 because it was the last year. And I've just put zeros there. So all I've done is to create a 0 underneath the element on the left and a 0 underneath the element on the right. And then if you look back in Tableau on the right, you'll see that I've created a polygon type. And if you have a polygon type with your country on detail, it will then shade in a polygon for each one. So then my only, excuse me, the only thing I then needed to do was determine, well, how am I going to plot these? So I plotted them on a Y value, and a Y value is determined by the rank here, so that we've got Norway at the top and the United States number 2, etc. And then I put a spread parameter in just to allow me to experiment slightly. So I can experiment, well, do I want them spread apart by 12, by 10, by 20, etc. And you would be able to design just to see how much of an overlap you want. But other than that, it's a relatively simple thing to do. And I do it with a cheat, if you like, by creating one visualization, taking the data from that, tweaking it, and then bringing it in, and then I have my my data tailored exactly for the design that I want. And really, this is just another quick insight into the garish visualization I did there before. If you want to know how do I get one circle to go over another circle and these circles as well, because you can't do transparent sheets in Tableau. Well, you're right, these aren't actually circles, these are lines. So this is a big sort of radial graph, if you like, with everything, and again, by pulling in a Excel sheet similar to how I've done, I was able to do that. And then if you make the lines thick, then it's all painted in. One downside is it looks a little bit sort of scruffy around here, but because it was a scruffy visualization to start with, that actually helps in this particular case. So there was a big cheat which worked really nicely on that, which I was very happy to show you. And we're more or less done. I just want to summarize with a couple of charts. Nadia Braemar, another one of my inspirations, she's a data artist from the Netherlands, and I listened to one of her talks recently, and she said bar charts and line charts won't solve everything. And we all know there's nothing wrong with bar charts and line charts, that they are the best charts to use, almost bar none. But there are opportunities to use other charts. So don't be afraid to try a chart that's unique or custom built. Broaden your mind. And that's sort of very much the mantra that I like to take. I just put this one in this morning because one thing I hadn't mentioned in any of my run-throughs or thought about this was the very last bit from Klaus Schulte there. Klaus, just yesterday, I think he's produced a Paralympic skiing video, and he said thanks to Neil for inspiration. And I can't say how fantastic it is to see when people have taken one of your ideas and used it. And then you see it's been retweeted here, and Klaus said, and it's fun. And I thought, yeah, it is fun. That's why I do it. I think it's fun to spend a weekend trying to recreate an album cover with pointless sport data. It might not be everyone's idea of fun, but if something is fun, then you will enjoy it and you will get better at it, and you will improve your creativity. You'll improve Tableau skills, because as you've seen, I've picked up a few sort of nice tips and tricks there, and it will really sort of help you potentially bring those back into a business situation. Okay, well, thank you very much. I've just put some links to some of the things that I've spoken about there, so that as and when this will go online later, you can see what some of these, some of the best places to reference the information is. And so I want to say thank you. Again, there's my details there, and I encourage you, if you have questions, to go on Twitter and have a look at design-driven data and perhaps put them on there. Now I need to see if there are any Q&A here. I can't see any. So with that, unless I'm missing them, I would say thank you very much once again. and hand you over to the organisers.